"Sing this, and I'll marry you," the billionaire's son mocked. He dared the invisible maid's daughter with an impossible song. He expected humiliation, but her voice froze everyone. She is a ghost cleaning the halls of an elite academy where she is an invisible scholarship student. By 6 a.m., she sings in the empty, dark auditorium. By 8 p.m., she mops the floors. Her life is a quiet cycle of service, driven by her mother's piling medical bills. Then one word spoken out of turn shatters her silence. In front of the entire class, the school's billionaire heir rips an impossible piece of music from a book and throws it at her. "Sing this at school," he mocks, "and I'll marry you." The students raise their phones, ready to record the humiliation. They expect her to break. They have no idea they just handed her a weapon. Her gift was a secret wrapped in a life of silent work. But a hidden talent cannot be quiet forever. It only waits for the right moment to be heard. The insult echoed in the high, sunlit halls of Apex Heights Academy. It was Wednesday morning, 4th period. The class was Advanced Music Theory, a room filled with the sons and daughters of the city's elite. They sat in expensive, casual clothes, discussing complex compositions with an easy, careless confidence. In the back row, Aisha Thompson sat perfectly still. She was silent. She did not belong here. Aisha was a ghost in a worn, second-hand uniform. She was present only because of a long-forgotten scholarship fund, a fund that barely covered her books. Mrs. Victoria Lang, the department head, pointed to the large screen at the front of the room. On it was the sheet music for Der Hölle Rache. It was the famous furious aria from Mozart's The Magic Flute. This Mrs. Lang announced, her voice sharp, is the pinnacle of the coloratura soprano. It is a test of vocal agility and deep emotional power. Few professionals in the world can truly master it. A hand went up. It belonged to Mason Hargrove III. "Mrs. Lang," Mason said. His voice was smooth and lazy. He did not bother to stand. "Come on. No high school student can actually sing that. It's just screeching. It sounds like a cat in a blender." The class laughed. It was the laugh of a crowd that knew who its leader was. Mason Hargrove III was the son of a billionaire. His family's name was carved in granite on the new gymnasium. He was tall, handsome, and moved with an arrogance that came from a life without consequences. He had never been told no. "It's not screeching," a quiet voice said from the back. Every head turned, 24 faces all at once. Aisha Thompson's face burned a deep, painful red. She had spoken without thinking. Her hands were instantly clammy. Mason's eyes narrowed. He did not know her name. He only knew her as the girl who sometimes wiped down tables in the cafeteria. The girl he passed in the hall, the one who always looked down. "I'm sorry," Mason challenged. A cruel, handsome smile played on his lips. He was enjoying this. "What did you say?" I said. "It's not screeching," Aisha repeated. Her voice was trembling, but it was clear. "People mistake the high Fs for noise, but they're not. They are the climax of the Queen's rage. It's pure fury. It's supposed to be sharp. It's supposed to hurt." The silence in the room was heavy. Mrs. Lang looked deeply annoyed by the interruption. She did not like students who spoke out of turn, especially not scholarship students. Mason's smile widened. This was new. This was entertainment. He stood up. He walked to the front of the room, right past Mrs. Lang's desk. He picked up a different music book, a thick, dusty volume of obscure 20th century pieces. He flipped through it dramatically, making a show of his search. He stopped. He ripped a page from the book. The sound of the paper tearing was loud in the quiet room. Mrs. Lang gasped but said nothing. Mason strode down the aisle. He tossed the sheet music onto Aisha's desk. It landed like a judgment. The music on the page was a nightmare. It was a dense, dark forest of notes full of strange symbols and impossible leaps. "Fine," Mason laughed. The class joined in a chorus of mockery. "You know so much about music. You know so much about rage." He leaned in close. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper that everyone in the room could hear. "You sing this at the Founders' Day competition. Sing this at school, and I'll marry you." The room exploded. Students pulled out their phones, eager to record Aisha's humiliation. Her face was pale, her tight curls falling across her eyes. She stared at the impossible notes. The title was barely readable: Elegy for a Fading Star. Aisha Thompson was not just a student. She was an invisible girl. She was at Apex Heights on the Sergeant Jamal Thompson Memorial Scholarship. Her great-grandfather was a local war hero. Decades ago, the town had set up a small fund in his name. It was just enough to send one descendant to Apex Heights, a token of old gratitude. Aisha was the first to ever use it. Her life was a world away from the luxury of her classmates. She lived with her mother, Lena, in a small apartment over a laundromat. The constant smell of detergent was the smell of home. Her mother was a maid. She worked 2 jobs, one of them cleaning the houses of families like the Hargroves. The medical bills piled up on the kitchen table. Lena had a cough that never seemed to go away. Aisha's day did not start at 8 a.m. It started at 5:30 a.m. She would wake in the dark, dress in her faded blue work uniform, and walk to the academy. She would let herself in with a staff key for 1 hour from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. The main auditorium was hers. It was empty. It was dark. The acoustics were perfect. This was her secret. This was her church. She would stand on the massive stage, a single ghost light illuminating her, and she would sing. She sang the songs her grandmother Grace had taught her. Her grandmother had been the one with the real talent. Grandma Grace used to sing gospel while folding laundry. Her voice had filled their tiny kitchen with joy and tragedy. Grandma Grace had passed away 2 years ago, but the music remained. It lived in Aisha's bones. Singing in the auditorium was the only time Aisha felt whole. The only time she felt brave, the only time she was not invisible. At 7 a.m., she would stop. She would change into her school uniform. Then she would head to the cafeteria. She would work the breakfast line, serving eggs to the same students who would ignore her in the halls. After her classes, she did not go home. She changed back into her work uniform. She mopped the floors. She scrubbed the tables. She cleaned the chalk from the boards. She stayed until 8 p.m., cleaning up the mess left by Mason Hargrove and his friends. She was a janitor, a cafeteria worker, a ghost. Mason Hargrove's life was very different. His father, Mason Sr., was a titan of industry. His world was one of expensive cars, weekend trips, and designer clothes. He was the king of Apex Heights. His girlfriend, Lauren Whitaker, was the most popular girl in school. Mason was not truly evil. He was just careless. He was bored. Aisha Thompson was a distraction, a moment of entertainment. He had made the cruel joke. By the time he got to his next class, he had already forgotten it. But Aisha could not forget that evening she was on her knees scrubbing a stain from the hallway floor. The very hallway where he had humiliated her. The sheet music stuck. It felt like it weighed 50 labai. The humiliation burned in her chest. "Sing this at school and I'll marry you." The laughter, the phones, the look of pity from Mrs. Lang, which was worse than the laughter. Aisha finished her shift, her body aching. She walked home under the streetlights, the impossible music clutched in her hand. When she got to her apartment, her mother, Lena, was asleep in a chair. The television was on, casting a blue light over the room. Lena was still in her maid's uniform. She had been too tired to change. A new envelope from the hospital sat on the table. It was bright white and unopened. Aisha went to her room. It was barely bigger than a closet. She looked at the sheet music. It was a piece designed to break a singer. It was full of strange time signatures, sudden jumps in pitch, and lyrics in a language she didn't recognize. "He thinks I'm nothing," she whispered to the empty room. "They all do." She thought of her great-grandfather, Sergeant Thompson. His portrait hung in the town hall. He had been awarded the highest honors for bravery. He had faced impossible odds and refused to back down. She thought of her grandmother, Grace. Her grandmother had a saying. "Your voice is a gift, Aisha. Don't let them keep it in the box." A slow, cold anger began to build in her. It was the same anger she had heard in the Queen's song. She looked at the music again. "He wants me to sing this," she thought. "He thinks I'll fail." She sat at her small desk, turned on her lamp, and began to work. The next day, the buzz in the school was all about the Founders' Day competition. A large, elegant banner was unfurled in the main hall. The Founders' Day Talent Competition Grand Prize, the Patron Scholarship, a full 4-year scholarship to the Juilliard Conservatory. All expenses paid. Aisha stared at the poster. The Juilliard Conservatory. It was the best in the world. It was not just a school. It was a dream so far out of reach she had never even dared to think it. This scholarship was not just about music. It was about escape. It meant no more mopping floors. It meant no more medical bills. It meant a future for her and her mother. It meant her mother could finally rest. It meant she could finally be seen. But there was a problem. The sign-up sheet was posted on the music room door, and at the bottom in small print it read, "Faculty sponsor signature required." Mrs. Lang would never sign. She would laugh in Aisha's face. There was only one other person she could ask, Mr. Harold Jenkins. Mr. Jenkins was the school's other music teacher. He was the opposite of Mrs. Lang, where she was sharp, polished, and modern. He was old, weary, and smelled of dust and coffee. Mrs. Lang taught the elite advanced theory classes. Mr. Jenkins taught music appreciation to students who just needed the credit. He had been at Apex Heights for 40 years. He had seen generations of rich, spoiled children pass through his room. He was jaded. He was tired. He had also been in the back of the auditorium during the incident with Mason Hargrove. He had heard Aisha's quiet correction about Mozart, and he had heard Mason's cruel reply. Aisha found him in his music room after school. It was a small, cluttered room in the basement. He was alone, sorting through a cabinet of old vinyl records. "Mr. Jenkins," Aisha said. Her voice was small. He grunted, not looking up. "What is it?" "I need a signature for the Founders' Day competition. I need a faculty sponsor." Mr. Jenkins stopped sorting. He turned very slowly and looked at her. He was a tall man, stooped by time. His eyes were sad. "You're Aisha Thompson, the girl from Mrs. Lang's class." "Yes, sir. The girl Mason Hargrove made that wager with." Aisha's face burned. "It's not about him, sir. It's about the scholarship, the Patron's Scholarship." Mr. Jenkins let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Child, do you have any idea what you're asking? That's not for people like, well, it's not for a beginner." "I'm not a beginner," Aisha said quietly. "Oh, really? Have you had tutors, private lessons, vocal coaches from New York?" "No, sir, I taught myself. My grandmother, she taught me. You taught yourself," he repeated. He sighed and sat down at the dusty grand piano. "This competition is a shark tank. Mrs. Lang is the head judge. She's already chosen her winner. Lauren Whitaker probably, or Mason himself. They will eat you alive." "I don't care," Aisha said, her voice gaining strength. "I have to try. My great-grandfather didn't back down. I won't either." Mr. Jenkins looked at her, a flicker of something new in his eyes. Jamal Thompson. You're one of his. He was my great-grandfather. Mr. Jenkins was silent for a long moment. He remembered the stories. Everyone in town did. Sergeant Thompson was a legend. All right, he said, his voice rough. You want my signature? You have to earn it. I will not sign my name to a joke. I will not let you be humiliated again. He placed his fingers on the piano keys. Sing this, he said. He played a simple ascending scale. Aisha took a deep breath. She centered herself. She thought of the empty auditorium at 6 a.m. She sang the scale. Mr. Jenkins's hands froze on the keys. It wasn't just her pitch. It was perfect. It was her tone, her control. There was a richness, a texture to her voice that he had not heard in decades. It was raw, yes, untrained, but it was there. It was the sound of pure, undeniable talent. He played a more complex series of notes, a difficult arpeggio. She sang it back to him flawlessly. He turned on the piano bench and truly looked at her for the first time. He saw the worn-out shoes, the faded uniform, the exhaustion in her eyes, and the fire. Good Lord, he whispered. How long? My whole life, sir. He grabbed a pen and scribbled his name on her form. The auditions are this Friday. It's not just me. Mrs. Lang and a guest judge from the school board will be there. What should I sing? Aisha asked. Mr. Jenkins looked at the elegy for a fading star in her hand, the piece Mason had thrown at her. Not that, he said with a scowl. Not yet. That's a weapon. You don't bring a cannon to a knife fight. You bring a perfectly sharp blade. He rummaged through a stack of music. He pulled out a simple, beautiful piece by Fauré. This, he said. It's simple. It's elegant. There's nowhere to hide. They're expecting a child. You show them an artist. Aisha took the music. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Don't thank me, he grumbled, turning back to his records. Just don't be terrible. Aisha walked home, her feet barely touching the pavement. The audition form was in her bag. Mr. Jenkins's signature, a small dark blot of hope. The music for Pavane was clutched in her hand. She entered her apartment quietly. The smell of soap and steam from the laundromat below was thick, but it was home. Her mother, Lena, was at the small kitchen table sorting a small mountain of coupons. The unopened hospital bill was still there. A white shark in a sea of grocery discounts. You're late, honey, Lena said. She did not look up. She had a pencil behind her ear. I had to stay, Aisha said. She put the music down on the table. Lena finally looked up. Her eyes were tired with dark circles underneath. She saw the sheet music. What's this? It's for a school competition, the Founders' Day event. A competition? Lena put the pencil down. Aisha, we don't have time for games. That school is for them, not for us. You have your work. You have your studies. It's not a game, Mom. Aisha's voice was firm but gentle. The grand prize. It's a scholarship, a full scholarship to the Juilliard Conservatory in New York. Lena stopped. She stared at her daughter. Juilliard, she whispered. The name sounded foreign, like a place on a map she could not find. I have to try, Mom. Grandma Grace, she would have wanted me to try. Lena looked at her daughter. She saw the same stubborn set of the jaw that her own mother, Grace, had. She saw the same fire that Sergeant Jamal Thompson had in the old cracked portrait at the town hall. Oh, Aisha, Lena said, her voice breaking. She coughed, a dry, racking sound that shook her thin frame. Of course you must try. Of course you must. Aisha put her arms around her mother. It's okay, Mom. I'll make us breakfast. No, Lena said, pulling away. She looked at the music. You practice. I'll make the toast. The next morning the auditorium was cold. It was 5:45 a.m. Aisha stood on the stage, the single ghost light casting a pale circle around her. She opened the music for Pavan. It was a simple, tender song, a song of longing. She began to sing. Her voice at first was small in the vast, dark space. She was singing for herself. She was singing for her mother. She was singing for her grandmother, Grace. She did not know that in the back, in the deepest shadows of the last row, Mr. Jenkins was standing. He had come in early, drawn by a small, nagging hope. He listened. He closed his eyes. The song was simple. Her voice was not. It was a clear, strong bell. It had none of the artificial polish of Mrs. Lang's other students. It was something real, something pure. He had heard voices like this only twice before in his 40-year career. Both times they were on the great stages of Europe. He slipped out before she finished, his heart pounding with a feeling he had not felt in years. It was not just hope, it was fear. He was afraid of what Mrs. Lang would do to this girl. Friday came. The auditions were held in the small, formal recital room, not the main auditorium. The room was full of nervous energy. Students in crisp, expensive clothes paced the hall, whispering to each other. They clutched leather music folios. They hummed complex, showy passages. Lauren Whitaker was there, holding court by the windows. She was Mason Hargrove's girlfriend. She was beautiful, blonde, and wore her privilege like a royal robe. She planned to sing a difficult, flashy Italian aria. She saw Aisha standing alone by the water fountain. Aisha was in her school uniform. It was clean, but the cuffs were frayed. "I'm surprised they let the staff audition," Lauren said loudly to her friends. "What are you going to do?" "Mop the stage?" Her friends laughed. Aisha looked down, her face burning. She clutched her single sheet of music. "Aisha Thompson," a voice called from the door. It was her turn. Aisha walked into the room. It was small and bright. 3 tables were arranged at the front. Mrs. Lang sat in the middle. She looked bored. Mr. Jenkins sat on the left. He was staring at his pen. On the right sat Mrs. Patricia Ellis, a kind-looking woman with gray hair. She was from the school board. She smiled at Aisha. "Name and peace, dear," Mrs. Ellis said. "Aisha Thompson, ma'am. I'll be singing Pavane by Gabriel Fauré." Mrs. Lang's pen clicked. "Fauré, how quaint." "A simple café song. Not exactly conservatory level, is it?" "Just sing, Miss Thompson," Mr. Jenkins said, his voice a low grumble. The school's accompanist, a nervous young man, began to play the simple rolling piano chords. Aisha took a breath. She closed her eyes. She was not in the room. She was on the dark stage at 6 a.m. She sang. The room changed. The air stilled. The accompanist's eyes went wide. He had been playing for the other students all day. They had been loud. They had been technically skilled. This was different. Aisha's voice was not loud. It was intimate. It was clear as glass. She did not just sing the notes. She told the story. She sang of wanting, of longing, of a simple, desperate human need. Mrs. Lang's pen stopped clicking. She sat up. Her eyes narrowed. This was not the mousy, invisible girl from her class. Mrs. Ellis had tears in her eyes. She was thinking of her late husband. Mr. Jenkins looked at the floor, a small secret smile on his face. The song ended. The last note hung in the air, a perfect shimmering thread. Silence. Aisha opened her eyes. She was terrified. "Well," Mrs. Lang said, clearing her throat. She was angry. "This was not part of the plan. This girl had no right to be this good. Your French is acceptable, but the piece is far too simple. It shows no real range." "I disagree, Victoria," Mrs. Ellis said. Her voice was gentle but firm. "That was the most honest piece of music I have heard all day. Your control, Aisha, It's breathtaking. She has talent, Mrs. Lang said, as if it were a disease. But she is untrained. Raw. She would be torn apart in the finals. Then we should train her, Mr. Jenkins said, finally looking up. It was the first time he had spoken. That is what a school is for, isn't it? Mrs. Lang stared at him. It was a challenge. She's in, Mr. Jenkins said, not to Mrs. Lang, but to Aisha. You're in the competition. The finals are in 2 weeks. Be in my office Monday, 4 p.m. Aisha nodded, unable to speak. She almost ran from the room. She stumbled into the hall, her heart a drum against her ribs. The news was out before she even got to her cleaning shift. Mason Hargrove was in the student lounge playing a video game on the massive screen. His friends were draped over the leather sofas. "You are not going to believe this," Lauren Whitaker said. She stormed into the room, her face red with anger. "Whoa, what's wrong?" Mason said, not taking his eyes off the game. "That Maid," Lauren spat the janitor girl. "Aisha, she's in the finals." Mason paused the game. He turned. "What are you talking about?" "She sang in the auditions. Old Jenkins and that Ellis woman, they put her through. Victoria Lang is furious. She's going to sing in the Founders' Day competition." Mason was silent. He was thinking, "Wait, one of his friends," Tyler said. "Aisha? Aisha? Isn't that the girl? The one from class," Mason said slowly. "The one-eyed Tyler's face lit up with a cruel grin. The one you said you'd marry. The sing this at school girl." The lounge erupted in laughter. Mason's face darkened. His stupid, careless joke was now a public event. "And guess what she sang?" Lauren fumed. "Some stupid, simple French song, not the monsterpiece you gave her. She chickened out. She's a coward and a fraud." Mason stood up. He was not laughing. He was annoyed. This girl was making him look stupid. "So, she's in," he said, grabbing his backpack. "Good, let her be. It'll be even more fun to watch her crash." "Where are you going?" Lauren demanded. "Music room," Mason said. "I'm in this competition too, remember?" "I actually have to go practice." He left. He was not just annoyed. He was something else. He couldn't put his finger on it. He thought of the girl in the class, the way she had looked at him. Not with fear, but with nothing, like he was not even there. And then her quiet voice. "It's not screeching." He had never been corrected before. Monday afternoon, Aisha knocked on the door of Mr. Jenkins's basement office. "Come in," he grunted. The room was a mess of music scores, dusty instruments, and old coffee cups. Mr. Jenkins was sitting at the piano. "You were good on Friday," he said. "Good enough." "Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Don't thank me. You embarrassed Mrs. Lang. She does not like being embarrassed. She will be coming for you in the finals." I don't understand. The finals are not just a talent show, Aisha. They are a political fight. Mrs. Lang wants her student, Lauren, to win. It makes her department look good. You are a problem. You are an unpolished, unknown problem. What do I do? "You stop being unpolished," he said. He pointed to the piano. "You have 2 weeks. We are going to work. 5 a.m. in the auditorium for vocals. 5 p.m. in here for theory. You will eat, sleep, and breathe music. Your janitor job." "I can't quit," Aisha said, panicked. "My mother, we need the money." Mr. Jenkins looked at her, his expression hard. He sighed. "Fine. Then you will be tired. You will work from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. every day." Sergeant Thompson did not quit. "You will not either." "Yes, sir." He tapped a stack of music on the piano. "Vocal exercises, scales, breathing techniques. We are going to rebuild you from the ground up." Aisha nodded, her eyes fixed on the music. "One more thing," Mr. Jenkins said. He reached under a pile of papers and pulled out a single torn page. It was the elegy for a fading star. the piece Mason had thrown at her. "Where did you get this?" Aisha whispered. "I found it in the trash bin outside the music room last week," Mr. Jenkins said, his eyes cold. "I assume you threw it away?" "It's impossible," she said. "The language, the notes, the language is Hungarian," Mr. Jenkins said. "The music is by a composer who lost his entire family in the war. It's not a song, it's a scream, it's a howl of grief." He placed the music on the stand in front of her. Mason Hargrove meant it as a joke. "He gave you a nuclear bomb and dared you to light the fuse." "I can't sing this," Aisha said, staring at the dense, angry notes. "No, you can't," Mr. Jenkins agreed. "You are not ready. Your voice would be shredded by the second page. You don't have the technique, and you don't have the rage." "I have the rage," Aisha said so quietly he almost missed it. Mr. Jenkins looked at her. He saw the fire again, banked low. "Good," he said. "We'll do the foray for the competition. It's safe. It's beautiful. You will win the scholarship with that." He tapped the elegy with one long finger. "But we will practice this. We will practice this in secret. We will practice this for you. Not for them. Not for the scholarship. We will practice this for your grandmother." "For my grandmother, yes." Mr. Jenkins said, "Talent like yours is a gift from God, Aisha, but it is also a responsibility. You are responsible for every note. This is the work." And so the work began. The next 2 weeks were a blur. Aisha Thompson's life became a sharp, repeating pattern of exhaustion and music. Her alarm clock buzzed at 5:00 a.m. The air in her small room was cold and dark. She would dress in layers, pull on her stocking cap, and walk through the silent, sleeping town to the academy. At 5:30 a.m., Mr. Jenkins would be waiting at the auditorium door. He was always there first, a large thermos of black coffee in his hand. "Good morning, Miss Thompson," he would grumble. "Let's see if you still have a voice." The work was not glorious. It was not like the movies. It was hard, repetitive, and often boring. It was breathing. "Breathe from your diaphragm," he would shout from the back row. "Not your chest. I want to see the note, not hear it. Support it. Pretend you are Sergeant Thompson holding up a collapsing bridge." It was posture. Your spine is a column of steel. The music rests on top of it. Do not slouch. Slouching is for amateurs. It was scales, endless scales, up and down, over and over, pushing her range by 1/2 step at a time. He was strengthening her voice, turning it from a beautiful, raw instrument into a refined, powerful tool. Again, again, and again, Miss Thompson. The note must be your servant, not your master. At 7:30 a.m., he would nod. "That will do. Go serve the eggs." She would run to the locker room, change into her cafeteria uniform, and work the breakfast line. She watched Mason Hargrove and Lauren Whitaker walk by, laughing, grabbing bacon without making eye contact. Then a full day of classes. She was a good student, but she found her mind drifting from calculus to musical theory. At 4:30 p.m., her last class ended. She did not go to the basement. She went to the janitor's closet. She cleaned the classrooms. She mopped the hall where Lauren had laughed at her. She emptied the trash from the music room where Mrs. Lang was giving Lauren a private lesson. She could hear Lauren's voice through the door. It was a powerful, technically brilliant soprano. She was singing a flashy, difficult aria from an Italian opera. It was full of high notes and fast, complicated runs. It was designed to win. Aisha's hands tightened on the mop handle. At 6 p.m., her cleaning shift ended. Her back ached. Her hands were red and raw from the cleaning chemicals. She walked down to the basement. Mr. Jenkins would be waiting in his small, cluttered office. "You're late," he'd say. "I had to clean Mrs. Lang's room." "Good. Humility is good for the artist. Sit." This was the other lesson. This was not about the foray song. He did not even let her practice it. The Forêt is a lullaby. He said you can sing that in your sleep. This is where you learn. He would put the elegy for a fading star on the piano. At first it was a disaster. The music was a dark, tangled forest. The Hungarian lyrics felt like stones in her mouth. The notes were unpredictable. They jumped from a low growl to a high, piercing wail. "I can't," she said, her voice cracking on the third day. "It's too much. It hurts." "Of course it hurts," Mr. Jenkins snapped. He was not a kind teacher. He was a demanding one. The man who wrote this had just lost his home, his wife, and his child. He wrote this, and then he never wrote music again. Do you think it is supposed to be pretty? You are not singing notes, Aisha. You are singing the sound of a life ending. He pointed to her. You told me you had the rage. I don't see it. I see a polite girl trying not to make a mistake. I am trying, Aisha said, her frustration boiling over. Trying is not good enough. What do you know of rage? Of loss? What makes you angry? Aisha Thompson. What? He pushed. That you have to work. That you have no money, that your mother is sick, that those children upstairs treat you like furniture. Please stop. That they laugh at you. Mr. Jenkins stood up, his voice rising. That Mason Hargrove, a boy with a $10,000 watch and a $2 soul, dared you to sing this. He thinks you are a joke. He thinks your life is a joke. I hate him, Aisha screamed. The words tore out of her throat. The room was suddenly silent. The single bare bulb on the ceiling hummed. Aisha was breathing hard. She was shaking. Mr. Jenkins sat down. He was calm. Good, he said quietly. The human voice is just a box of air. It is the emotion that makes it an instrument. Now, let's look at the second page. Aisha looked at the music. The notes were not just notes anymore. They were words she had been too afraid to say. She took a breath. She sang. It was not a song. It was a controlled scream. It was the sound of the medical bills on the table. It was the sound of Lauren's laughter. It was the sound of her mother coughing in the next room. It was the most honest, powerful sound she had ever made. She got through the first 2 pages before her voice gave out. She was sweating. She was crying. Mr. Jenkins handed her a glass of water. His hands were steady. Now he said, We know you can. We will do this every day. We will build your strength. You will control this fire. You will not let it control you. This is our secret. This is for you. Yes, sir, she whispered. She stumbled home that night after 8 p.m. The apartment was dark except for the blue light of the television. Lena, her mother, was asleep in her chair. She was still in her maid uniform. Aisha went to wake her to tell her to go to bed. She saw an envelope on the table. It was from the hospital. It was bright red. Final notice. Aisha's blood ran cold. She picked it up. She tore it open. The amount listed inside made her feel dizzy. It was an impossible number. It was more money than their apartment, their car, everything they had ever owned. Mom, Aisha whispered, shaking her mother's shoulder. Lena woke up with a gasp, her hand flying to her chest. Aisha, honey, what time is it? Mom, Aisha said, holding up the letter. Why didn't you tell me? Lena looked at the letter, and her face crumpled. The strong, proud woman who had raised Aisha was gone. In her place was a terrified, sick woman. I didn't want to worry you, Lena cried, her voice a dry whisper. Not with your competition. I thought I could... I don't know. I thought I could ask for more time. More time? Aisha said. Mom, this is... I know, Lena said. They said if we don't pay something, they won't continue the treatments. Aisha stared at the red letter. This was not about a scholarship anymore. This was not about Juilliard. This was about her mother's life. The Juilliard Scholarship, the Patron Scholarship. It came with a cash prize for educational and living expenses. a prize large enough to cover this bill. This was no longer a competition. It was a rescue. "Go to bed, Mom," Aisha said. Her voice was calm. It was a strange, cold calm. "I will handle this." "Honey, how?" "We can't." "I will handle it," Aisha repeated. "You just rest. You just have to rest." She helped her mother to bed. She closed the door. She went to the kitchen and looked at the red letter. She thought of the elegy for a fading star. She thought of the rage Mr. Jenkins had demanded. It was here. It was cold and bright and pure. The next day, the school was buzzing. It was the day of the Founders' Day final competition. The auditorium was filling up. Parents in expensive suits and jewelry found their seats. Students were dressed in their best. The entire school board was there. In the front row sat Mason Hargrove, Sr., a hard, imposing man. Backstage, it was chaos. Lauren Whitaker was warming up in a corner, her personal vocal coach beside her. She was wearing a stunning, custom-made red dress. She looked like a professional. Mason Hargrove was pacing in the hall, looking annoyed. He was also competing, playing a brutally difficult piano piece. He kept looking at his phone. Aisha was in a small, empty dressing room. It was the one usually used for storage. Mr. Jenkins knocked and entered. He was wearing an old, threadbare tuxedo. Aisha. She was standing in front of the mirror. She was wearing her grandmother's only good dress. It was a simple dark green dress from at least 20 years ago. She had washed and ironed it. It was clean, but it was old. "I look like a ghost." Aisha said. "You look like an artist," Mr. Jenkins said. "You look like your grandmother. You look like Sergeant Thompson's relative. You have a backbone of steel." He handed her a small folded piece of paper. "What's this?" "My notes," he said. "Remember. Breathe, support, tell the story. The song it is a song of longing. Sing it to them. Make them remember what it is to want something." "I can do this," she said. I know you can." He paused. "Are you nervous?" "Yes," she said. "I'm terrified." "Good. Nerves are energy. Use it. Don't let it use you." He turned to leave. "Mr. Jenkins?" He stopped. "Thank you." "Don't thank me, Miss Thompson," he grumbled. "Just don't be terrible." He left. Aisha took a deep breath. She could hear the muffled sound of the crowd. She could hear Mrs. Lang acting as the master of ceremonies, introducing the first act. Aisha walked out to the hallway backstage. Mason Hargrove was there leaning against the wall. He saw her. He was not used to seeing her in a dress. He was not used to seeing her out of her uniform, either the school's or the janitor's. "So," he said, trying to sound casual. "The maid, you're actually going through with this." Aisha looked at him. She was not the same girl he'd mocked in class. She was not afraid of him. She was not afraid of anyone. "Yes," she said. "I am." Mason was taken aback by her calm. He had expected her to be a wreck. "That song you're singing," he said. "The foray, it's a simple piece. You're not going to win against Lauren with a simple song." "It's not about winning against Lauren," Aisha said. "Then what's it about?" Aisha thought of the red letter on her kitchen table. It's just something I have to do." Mason looked at her. He saw the dark circles under her eyes. He saw the strength in her jaw. The prickle of guilt he had felt before was now a sharp, uncomfortable jab. "That joke I made," he said, his voice suddenly low, "in class about marrying you." "I remember," Aisha said. Her voice was cold. "It was stupid. I was bored. It doesn't matter, Mason," she said. "It does," he said, and he was surprised at his own intensity. "Lauren, she's been telling everyone they're all waiting. They're waiting to see you sing the elegy. They think this is all a big joke." Aisha's eyes narrowed. "What?" "Lauren told everyone that the Marry Me joke was about the foray song." that I dared you to sing that simple song, and if you did, you were just trying to get my attention." Aisha felt the blood drain from her face. Lauren had twisted it. She had turned Aisha's one chance into a pathetic, desperate grab for a rich boy's attention. "They're not laughing at me, Aisha," Mason said. "They're laughing at you." The stage manager called a name. "Lauren Whitaker." "You're on deck." Lauren swept past them, her red dress rustling. "Wish me luck, Mason," she cooed. She shot a look at Aisha. "Try not to get mop water on the stage, dear." Lauren walked out. Aisha was left in the hallway. The cold rage from the basement was back. Mason saw the look on her face. "Aisha, I'm sorry." Aisha Thompson, the stage manager, called. "You're next." Aisha looked at Mason. "You want to hear the elegy for a fading star?" she whispered. "You have no idea what you're asking for." She turned and walked toward the stage, leaving him alone in the hall. Lauren Whitaker swept onto the stage to a wave of applause. The red dress shimmered. She looked every bit the star. She was singing a modern, furiously complex piece chosen by Mrs. Lang to highlight her technical precision. It was full of fast staccato notes and jarring leaps. Lauren was a flawless machine. She hit every note. Her pitch was perfect. Her timing was robotic. It was a brilliant performance. It was also completely empty. There was no heart. It was just a series of difficult sounds. She finished striking a dramatic pose. The crowd made up of her parents' friends erupted in loud, polite applause. Mrs. Lang at the judges' table was beaming. Lauren curtsied and walked off stage, gliding past Aisha. "Good luck," Lauren whispered, her voice full of ice. "Try not to bore them to death with that antique lullaby." "And now," Mrs. Lang's voice boomed, "our final contestant, Miss Aisha Thompson. She will be singing." Her tone was dismissive. Aisha walked out. The change was immediate. After the glittering red dress, Aisha's simple dark green dress made her look like a shadow. She looked small and plain. A murmur went through the crowd. This was the janitor girl, the one Mason Hargrove had joked about. Aisha walked to the center of the stage. She did not look at the crowd or the judges. The accompanist began the gentle rolling chords of the Fauré song. Aisha took a breath. She thought of her mother's face, the red letter, Lauren's cruel whisper, Mason's words. "They're laughing at you." The music was soft. Aisha sang the first note, but something was wrong. Her voice was thin. It was shaking. She was terrified. The weight of the hospital bill, the exhaustion, the humiliation, it was all crashing down on her. "Breathe." She heard Mr. Jenkins's voice in her head. "Tell the story." She tried the second line, but her voice cracked. A tiny, audible break. In the audience, Lauren's friends began to snicker. Mrs. Lang at the judges' table leaned over to the school board member and whispered something, a small, triumphant smile on her face. Aisha was failing. She looked out, her eyes blurred with panic. She saw Mason in the third row, his face pale. He wasn't laughing. He looked ashamed. She saw Mr. Jenkins in the back, standing by the door. He was staring at the floor. His shoulders slumped, defeated. He had believed in her, and she was letting him down. That single thought cut through the panic. "No, I will not." The accompanist was playing more softly, trying to help her. Aisha held up one hand. The pianist stopped playing. The auditorium went dead silent. 1,000 people held their breath. Aisha had stopped the show. Mrs. Lang started to rise. "Miss Thompson, is there a—" "I'm sorry," Aisha said. Her voice was quiet but clear, and it carried. I can't sing this song." A gasp went through the crowd. This was the final humiliation. Lauren in the wings smiled. "I can't sing this song," Aisha repeated, her voice stronger. Not because I don't know it, but because it's not the truth. Mrs. Lang was furious. Miss Thompson, you will sing your chosen piece or you will be disqualified. Then I am disqualified, Aisha said. She turned, but not to leave. She walked to the accompanist. She bent and whispered something. He looked at her, his eyes wide with shock. He shook his head. I don't have the music for that. I can't. It's okay, Aisha whispered. I don't need it. She walked back to the center of the stage. She was no longer a ghost. She was a soldier. Mrs. Lang, Aisha said, her voice like steel. Mr. Hargrove. She looked directly at Mason. A few weeks ago, Mr. Hargrove made a joke. He gave me a piece of music. He dared me to sing it. He told me if I sang it at school, he would marry me. The crowd erupted. The whispers were a roar. Mason sank in his seat, his face burning. Mason, senior, in the front row, turned and stared at his son with ice in his eyes. It was a joke, Aisha continued, her voice cutting through the noise. A cruel joke. He and his friends and all of you thought a girl like me, a girl who mops your floors, could never sing it. You thought I was a joke. She took a deep, shuddering breath. She was perfectly, terribly still. He was right, she said. It is an impossible piece of music. It's called Elegy for a Fading Star. It's about rage and loss and grief. She closed her eyes, and it is the only song I have left to sing. And then she sang a cappella with no music, nothing but her voice in the silent auditorium. It was not the foray. It was not pretty. It was a low, guttural note, a sound that seemed to come from the earth. It was the elegy. The first sound was so shocking, so full of pain that people in the front row flinched. Mrs. Lang's face went white. This was not music. This was a violation. Mr. Jenkins, in the back, stood up, his hand gripping the doorframe. His eyes were wide. He had told her she wasn't ready. Aisha sang of the lost home. Her voice was not a clear bell. It was a raw, powerful, wounded thing. It was her mother's cough. It was the red hospital letter. It was every time she had been ignored or laughed at. She was not just singing the notes. She was the notes. She reached the first impossible leap, the part Mr. Jenkins had said would shred her. Aisha's voice did not just hit the note. It attacked it. It was a controlled, perfect scream, a note of such pure, focused rage that it seemed to shake the lights. The accompanist, forgotten at his piano, was crying. In the third row, Mason Hargrove was rigid. This was his fault. This creature on the stage, this thing of fire and sound. He had created her. He had given her the weapon, and now she was using it to burn the world down. Aisha's voice built. She was in the heart of the piece, the part that was just a dense, dark forest of grief. Her voice broke, but it broke on purpose. It cracked and splintered, a perfect mirror of the composer's broken heart. This was not a girl singing. This was a woman breaking, and it was the most beautiful, terrifying thing anyone in that room had ever seen. She reached the final passage. The music called for a soft, fading note. But Aisha did not fade. She gathered every last bit of her breath. She thought of her great-grandfather, Sergeant Thompson. She thought of her grandmother, Grace. She thought of her mother. She sang the final note. It was not a whisper. It was a roar, a single, sustained, crystal-clear note of pure defiance. It was the note of the Queen of the Night. It was the note of a warrior. It filled the auditorium. It pushed against the walls. It vibrated in the bones of every person. She held it 1 second, 2, 5, 10. She held it until there was no air left in her body. And then silence. Aisha stood, her chest heaving, sweat and tears rolling down her face. She had given them everything. She had nothing left. No one moved. No one clapped. No one breathed. The silence was a solid living thing. It stretched for a minute. Then from the back of the room, a single rough voice. "Good God," Mr. Jenkins whispered. He was the first to clap. A single stunned clap. Then, from the front row, Mason Hargrove, Sr., stood up. The billionaire. He looked at his son, then at Aisha. He too began to clap. And then the auditorium exploded. It was not applause. It was a standing, screaming, crying ovation. People were on their feet shouting. It was a roar. Aisha Thompson just stood there and let it wash over her. Mrs. Lang was frozen, her face a mask of disbelief. The school board member was crying. Mason Hargrove III was still in his seat. He was not clapping. He was staring at the stage, his world completely tilted off its axis. He had made a joke, and she had turned it into a masterpiece. 1 week later, the small apartment above the laundromat was full of boxes. The red hospital bill was on the table. Stamped across it in big black letters were 2 words: paid in full. The Founders' Day competition had been a disaster for the judges. After Aisha's performance, there was no choice. The elegy was all that mattered. The patron scholarship was hers, the Juilliard Conservatory. The cash prize had arrived in her mother's bank account 2 days later. "Aisha, are you ready?" Her mother, Lena, called. Lena's voice was different. The cough was still there, but the sound was lighter. It was the sound of hope. "Almost, Mom." Aisha was packing the last of her grandmother's things. She picked up a small framed photo of Grace. There was a knock on the open apartment door. Aisha turned. Mason Hargrove was standing there. He was not in his designer clothes. He was in simple jeans and a t-shirt. He looked smaller. "Hi," he said. He was holding a small, awkward-looking envelope. "Hi," Aisha said. She did not smile. She was waiting. "My father," Mason said. He grounded me for the next year. He took my car, my phone, my credit cards. I'm sorry to hear that," Aisha said. "No, don't be," Mason said, looking at his shoes. "It's the first smart thing he's ever done. He's making me get a job here at the laundromat downstairs as an intern." Aisha almost smiled. "An intern?" "Yeah." He looked up. His eyes were clear. The lazy arrogance was gone. "I heard you sing that day." I've never. He couldn't finish." He held out the envelope. "This is for you." "For my father," he said. He said, "Sergeant Thompson's family should never have had to struggle. He set up a new fund for your mother for her treatments forever." Aisha took the envelope, but she did not open it. "And this," Mason said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a single torn page. It was the elegy for a fading star, the page he had ripped from the book. "I found this," he said, "in the trash. I think you should have it." Aisha looked at the impossible music. She looked at the boy in front of her. "Mason," she said. "Yeah, I'm not going to marry you." A small, genuine smile touched Mason's lips. "Yeah," he said, his voice rough. "I figured that. I don't think I could handle it." Aisha took the music from him. "Good luck, Mason Hargrove," she said. "Good luck, Aisha Thompson," he replied. He turned and walked down the stairs. Aisha stood in the empty room. She heard a car horn. It was Mr. Jenkins. He was driving them to the airport. New York was waiting. She put the music in her bag. She took one last look at the small, cramped apartment. She thought of the empty auditorium at 6:00 a.m., the ghost light, the silence. Her gift was a secret wrapped in a life of silent work. But a hidden talent cannot be quiet forever. Aisha Thompson smiled. She picked up the last box, turned off the light, and closed the door. It was time to be heard. And that's where we'll leave Aisha on her way to New York. Her grandmother's dress packed with the song of defiance that changed her life. I hope this story was a good escape, whether you were winding down for the night or just taking a quiet moment for yourself. What part of Aisha's journey hit you the hardest? Drop a comment below. I love reading your thoughts. And if you'd like to be part of this community, please consider liking and subscribing. It lets us know you're out there listening and helps us keep these stories coming. Thanks for spending this time with